Commander Park sat motionless at the command center of Earth's orbital defense platform, his eyes fixed on the main screen as the alien transmission ended. The message left no room for doubt. Surrender Earth to the Galactic Empire or face immediate occupation. The alien who delivered it had blue skin and 4 eyes, speaking perfect English with an unsettling mechanical precision. "They've given us 6 hours to respond," said Lieutenant Kim, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. She stood beside Park, her uniform crisp and her posture rigid. Years of military training had prepared her for many things, but first contact with hostile aliens hadn't been on the list. Park nodded slowly, his weathered face revealing nothing of the calculations running through his mind. "Relay the coordinates to all defense platforms. Activate the Aegis protocol." Kim's eyes widened slightly. "Sir, Aegis has never been field-tested. The energy requirements alone cold." "We've prepared for this day for 30 years, Lieutenant," Park interrupted. "It's time to see if our preparations were enough." Across Earth's orbit, 27 defense platforms silently came to full alert. Hidden beneath their ordinary satellite appearances, advanced weapons systems began to hum with power. In underground bases around the planet, military personnel rushed to battle stations. Park opened a secure channel to Earth's Unified Defense Council. "This is Commander Park. We have first contact with a hostile alien force identifying themselves as the Galactic Empire. They've demanded our surrender. Request permission to implement Aegis Protocol." There was only a brief pause before President Ryu's voice came through. "Permission granted, Commander. Defend Earth by any means necessary." Lieutenant Kim moved to her station, fingers flying across holographic controls, sending activation codes to all platforms. "Aegis will be ready in 4 hours." Park turned to Communications Officer Shin. "Send a message to all Earth military vessels. Battle stations, silent running. No transmissions unless absolutely necessary." Beneath the lunar surface, Admiral Han received the alert in the hidden dock that housed Earth's experimental fleet. 12 ships built with reverse-engineered technology from the crashed alien vessel in Mongolia 30 years ago. The ships looked nothing like traditional space vessels. They were asymmetrical, with curves and angles that seemed to defy conventional engineering. "All crews to ships," Han ordered. "Prepare for possible engagement. Weapons and shields at full capacity." Back on the defense platform, Park watched the countdown timer. The aliens would return in less than 2 hours. Earth's highest military officials had gathered in a secure virtual conference. "What do we know about their capabilities?" asked General Yoon from Asian Command. Park displayed the sensor readings. "Their ships use some form of faster-than-light travel. Energy readings suggest weapons far beyond our conventional capabilities. They have 23 vessels of varying sizes. And you believe Aegis will work against them?" General Yoon's doubt was clear. "It's designed to," Park replied simply. "We've been preparing since the Mongolia crash. If it doesn't, we implement Scorched Earth." The room fell silent at the mention of humanity's last resort strategy. As the hours passed, Lieutenant Kim approached Park. "Sir, Aegis is fully charged and calibrated. All platforms report ready." Park nodded. "Now we wait." They didn't wait long. Alarms blared as the sensors detected spatial distortions forming at the exact coordinates the aliens had transmitted. "Multiple objects emerging from what appears to be artificially created wormholes," reported Officer Shin, matching the Imperial ship profiles. 23 vessels, largest is approximately 5 kilometers in length. Park's face remained calm. "Let them make the first move." The Imperial fleet arranged itself in a precise formation. 3 massive dreadnoughts at the center, surrounded by smaller vessels. Their design was elegant yet threatening, with sleek lines and glowing weapon ports. A transmission came through. The same blue-skinned alien appeared on screen. "Your time has elapsed. Your surrender is expected immediately. Resistance will result in orbital bombardment of major population centers." Park looked to President Ryu on a separate screen, who gave a slight nod. "This is Commander Park of Earth Defense Force. Our response is as follows." He paused, then simply said, "Aegis activate." Lieutenant Kim entered the final command sequence. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, invisible waves of gravitational distortion burst forth from the defense platforms, engulfing the alien fleet. The precisely tuned gravitational fields didn't simply attack the ships. They attacked space itself around them. Admiral Han watched from his command ship just behind the moon as the alien vessels began to distort. Metal groaned and bent as localized gravity around each ship increased to hundreds of times Earth normal. The smaller vessels were the first to collapse, crumpling like aluminum cans in an invisible fist. The alien commander's transmission cut in and out. What? Impossible. Primitive. Cannot. The signal died as his ship twisted into an unrecognizable shape. The Imperial fleet attempted to return fire, but their weapons couldn't lock onto the defense platforms through the gravitational distortion. Their engines flared as they tried to retreat, but the artificial gravity well held them fast. Within minutes, 22 of the 23 Imperial vessels had been crushed, torn apart, or imploded by the Aegis system. Park had ordered the system to spare one small cruiser. "Disable their weapons but leave life support intact," he ordered. When the gravitational assault ended, a single Imperial cruiser remained, damaged but functional. Admiral Han brought the Earth fleet out from behind the moon, surrounding the alien vessel. "Open a channel," Park ordered. The blue-skinned alien appeared again, now with visible injuries and fear in all four eyes. General Lee stepped forward, his voice firm and clear. "This was a warning. Return to your empire. Tell them Earth is not to be disturbed." The alien ship was allowed to limp away, jumping into hyperspace with barely functioning engines. As it disappeared, Park turned to his crew. "This was just the beginning," he said quietly. "They'll be back, and in greater numbers." Lieutenant Kim nodded. "But now, they know we're not defenseless." "No," Park agreed, looking at the debris field that had once been an alien armada. "Now they know that humanity is not to be taken lightly." Far across the galaxy, an Imperial messenger knelt before Emperor Ju, delivering news that would shake the foundations of the 10,000-year-old empire. For the first time in its history, an Imperial fleet had been utterly defeated by a world they had considered primitive. Emperor Dai of the Galactic Empire slammed his fist on the ornate council table. The sound echoed through the massive chamber, causing several council members to flinch. The table itself, carved from rare crystal trees that grew only on conquered worlds, cracked slightly under the impact. "One backwater planet dares to challenge us." His voice shook with rage. "A primitive world we didn't even know existed until last month has destroyed an Imperial fleet." The Imperial Council chamber fell silent. 20 of the Empire's highest officials sat frozen, afraid to speak. The blue-skinned messenger who had delivered the news trembled visibly, his four eyes fixed on the floor. "Your Majesty," the messenger said, voice barely audible, "the sole surviving ship has provided complete sensor data of the encounter." Emperor Dai's purple eyes narrowed. He wore ornate golden armor even in council meetings, a tradition dating back thousands of years. "Show me." A hologram appeared above the center of the table. It showed Earth's defense platforms activating strange weapons that seemed to bend space itself. Imperial ships crumpled like paper toys under invisible forces. Grand Admiral Choi cleared his throat. He was older than most council members, with gray streaks in his blue hair and scars from 100 campaigns visible on his face. "Your Majesty, our preliminary reports suggest their technology is..." Silence. Emperor Dai stood, towering over the others. His royal armor gleamed under the light of 3 artificial suns hanging from the chamber ceiling. "We rule 10,000 worlds. They are nothing. A lucky defense, nothing more. Assemble the 7th Fleet. I want Earth reduced to ash." Choi hesitated, then bowed deeply. "As you command, Your Majesty." Minister Jun leaned forward. Perhaps we should study their defenses further before. Are you questioning my judgment? The Emperor's voice was suddenly quiet, which everyone in the room knew was far more dangerous than his shouting. Minister Jun paled. No, Your Majesty. I merely suggest caution when facing unknown. The Empire does not show caution. Emperor Day interrupted. The Empire shows power. Admiral Choi, you have your orders. Assemble the 7th Fleet. Add the 3rd and 5th as well. I want overwhelming force. Show these humans what it means to defy the oldest and greatest power in the galaxy. Choi bowed again. It will be done. Over the next 3 weeks, the Empire gathered its forces. The 7th Fleet alone consisted of over 600 warships. Combined with the 3rd and 5th, the Armada grew to over 2,000 vessels of various sizes. The Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion served as the flagship, a vessel 15 kilometers long with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. On Earth, the detection systems spotted the gathering Imperial forces long before they arrived. In the underground war room beneath the Pacific Ocean, Earth's Defense Council reviewed the information. They're coming back, General Lee said, pointing to the holographic display. Much bigger force this time. President Rio nodded. As expected. Is Project Quantum ready? Chief Scientist Moon stepped forward. Yes, Madam President. The disruptors have been deployed throughout near-Earth space. They're completely undetectable until activated. Captain Song of Earth's Special Forces studied the deployment map. His stealth vessel had spent the last 3 weeks placing the quantum disruptors in a carefully calculated pattern around Earth's orbital approaches. The disruptors will create localized tiers in spacetime, he explained. Any Imperial ship caught in the effect will be partially phased out of our dimension. Partially? Asked Minister Kang. Complete dimensional shifting would require more energy than we can generate, Moon replied. Partial shifting will be sufficient. 3 days later, Captain Song sat in his stealth vessel at the edge of the solar system, watching as space itself seemed to tear open. The Imperial Armada emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. Over 2,000 warships against a single planet. Song activated his secure communication channel. Target confirmed. Imperial Armada has arrived. Counting 2,047 vessels. Request permission to activate disruptors. Back in the war room, President Ryu gave a single nod. Permission granted. Captain Song's fingers moved across the control panel. Quantum disruptors activating in 3, 2, 1. Throughout near-Earth space, hundreds of quantum disruptors simultaneously activated. The Imperial Armada had no warning. One moment they were advancing in perfect formation. The next moment chaos erupted. Song watched through his ship's specialized sensors as human quantum disruptors activated throughout the enemy fleet. Ships began disappearing in flashes of twisted spacetime, not completely vanishing, but partially shifting between dimensions. The effect was horrifying to witness. Massive Imperial dreadnoughts stretched and distorted, parts of them seemingly there and not there simultaneously. We warned them, he murmured. On the Imperial flagship, Grand Admiral Choi watched in horror as his carefully arranged formation dissolved into panic. Ship after ship reported critical failures as parts of their hulls existed in different dimensional phases. Impossible, he shouted. Their technology cannot be this advanced. Emergency alarms blared across the flagship as the quantum effect reached them. Choi watched as his own hand seemed to flicker between existence and non-existence, causing excruciating pain. Retreat, he gasped into the fleet-wide communication. All ships retreat immediately. The remnants of the Imperial fleet struggled to reactivate their hyperdrives. Only about 400 ships managed to escape, jumping away in disarray rather than in their usual perfect sequence. 2 days later, the Earth Council drafted a formal diplomatic message. It was transmitted on all frequencies the Empire had used. To Emperor Dai of the Galactic Empire, Earth seeks no conflict. We request formal recognition of human sovereignty and a treaty of non-interference. We possess technologies you do not understand. Further aggression will be met with proportional response. We await your reply. The message reached the imperial capital 3 days later. It was delivered to Emperor Dai while he sat on his throne, receiving reports of the fleet's devastating defeat. Emperor Dai listened to the human message, his face becoming darker with each word. When it finished, he stood silently. The court held its breath. With a sudden movement, Emperor Dai tore the data crystal containing the message to pieces, scattering the fragments across the polished floor. "Prepare all fleets," he said, his voice deadly calm. "I want every ship we have. These humans have not seen what the Empire can truly do when provoked." Grand Admiral Choi, still recovering from his partial dimensional shifting, looked up with alarm. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider their offer. Their technology is unlike anything we've—" "One more word of doubt, Admiral, and you will be executed for cowardice." Emperor Dai cut him off. "The Empire does not negotiate with primitives. The Empire does not show mercy to those who resist. The Empire conquers. That is our way for 10,000 years." As the Emperor stormed out, Admiral Choi exchanged worried glances with Minister Jun. "He's going to get us all killed," Jun whispered. Choi nodded slightly. "And he may take half the galaxy with him." "Bioweapon deployment complete, General." Colonel Jin of Imperial Special Operations reported from his cloaked vessel orbiting New Terra, humanity's largest colony. He spoke into a secure communication device, his blue face illuminated by the glow of monitors tracking the invisible death spreading across the planet below. General Min of the Imperial Strategic Command nodded with satisfaction from his location in the Imperial flagship, safely hidden in a nearby asteroid field. "Excellent. Maintain your position and record all effects. The Emperor wants detailed reports on human biological responses." "Understood, General." Colonel Jin adjusted his vessel's cloaking systems to ensure they remained undetected. The mission had been planned for weeks after the embarrassing defeats at Earth. Emperor Dai had personally authorized this new approach. If humans couldn't be defeated through direct confrontation, they would be broken through terror and biological warfare. New Terra was humanity's pride, their first and largest extrasolar colony. More than 12 million people called it home, with vast cities sprawling across its Earth-like continents. The colony represented decades of human expansion and technological achievement. Jin watched his monitors as the bioweapon spread. The Imperial scientists had designed it specifically for human physiology after studying captured specimens. The weapon was elegant in its simplicity, a self-replicating airborne pathogen that attacked the human respiratory system with devastating speed. First casualties confirmed, Jin reported as his sensors detected mass medical emergencies erupting across New Terra's capital city. Spread rate is exceeding projections. The bioweapon moved faster than even the Imperial scientists had predicted. It swept through population centers like an invisible wildfire. Hospital systems were overwhelmed within the first hour. By the second hour, government functions had collapsed as officials succumbed to the pathogen. Colonel Jin continued his clinical observations. "General, the effectiveness is unprecedented. I'm recording mortality rates of nearly 100% in exposed areas." On New Terra, parents watched helplessly as their children gasped for breath. Medical staff fought desperately to save lives before falling victim themselves. The streets filled with the dead and dying as people tried to flee the invisible death that had come without warning. 7 hours after deployment, Jin made his final report. "General, preliminary assessment complete. Population centers are decimated. Approximately 3 million human colonists are confirmed dead. Several million more are in terminal stages. The colony's infrastructure has effectively collapsed." "Excellent work, Colonel," General Min replied. "The Emperor will be pleased. Return to rendezvous point immediately." Jin's vessel slipped away from New Terra, leaving behind a dying world. What he didn't know was that his cloaked vessel had been detected 3 minutes after arrival by New Terra's advanced sensor grid, a technology the Empire had grossly underestimated. Although the colony was devastated, its automated defense systems had maintained full function, recording everything. And these systems had already transmitted complete data about the attack back to Earth, including the bioweapons composition and the exact specifications of Jin's invisible vessel. On Earth, the Emergency Council convened within minutes of receiving New Terra's distress signal. The room was silent as they watched the horrific footage streaming in. Streets filled with the dead, children collapsing in playgrounds, an entire world dying in agony. Admiral Han slammed his fist on the table. This goes beyond warfare. This is extinction-level barbarism. President Yoon sat motionless, his face a mask of controlled rage. After 20 minutes of briefings, he stood. "Prepare a global address," he said quietly, "and establish a direct channel to the imperial capital. I want Emperor Day to hear this personally." 2 hours later, President Yoon stood before a simple podium. No fancy backdrop, no flags or symbols, just a man in a plain dark suit. But every human on Earth and throughout the colonies watched as he began to speak. "People of Earth and our colonies," he began, his voice steady. "Today, the Galactic Empire has committed an act of genocide against our people. The colony of New Terra has been attacked with a biological weapon of unprecedented cruelty. Within hours, 3 million human colonists were dead. Men, women, and children murdered without warning or provocation. Images from New Terra appeared beside him, hospitals overflowing with the dead, playgrounds where children lay where they had fallen, entire families found holding each other in their final moments. "Our patience is at an end," Yoon continued, his eyes burning with cold fury. "We have twice defeated Imperial military actions against us. We offered peace. We requested only to be left alone. In response, they have chosen to target our civilians with weapons of mass destruction." The broadcast switched to a direct transmission to the Imperial Palace. Emperor Da was caught mid-conversation with his advisors, clearly surprised by the sudden intrusion into the Empire's most secure communication systems. "Emperor Da," President Yoon said, his voice now arctic, "this is humanity's final warning. Withdraw all forces from human space immediately and surrender those responsible for this atrocity, or we will show you what humanity is truly capable of. Your worlds will burn." Emperor Day recovered from his surprise, his face contorting with rage. "How dare you?" "We know exactly who ordered this attack," Yoon interrupted. "We have identified Colonel Jin's vessel. We have tracked General Min's flagship. We have mapped your entire command structure. We have been watching you far longer than you realize." Emperor Dai fell silent, momentarily stunned by the precision of the human leader's knowledge. "You believe you know warfare," Yoon continued. "You do not. You believe you understand violence. You do not. What you have experienced so far from us has been restraint." Yoon's face filled the screen, his eyes reflecting a determination beyond anger. "You have 48 hours to comply with our demands. After that, the Empire will learn why. Throughout our history, humans have always feared other humans more than any external threat." The transmission cut before Emperor Day could respond. In the Imperial Palace, silence fell over the throne room. For the first time, uncertainty showed on the Emperor's face. General Pak, the Emperor's chief military advisor, spoke carefully. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should consider." "No," Emperor Dai snapped, recovering his composure. "This is clearly a bluff. What can one species possibly do against an empire of 10,000 worlds? Our bioweapon strategy was brilliant. It shows we can strike them without directly engaging their unusual defenses." Minister Jun stepped forward hesitantly. "But Majesty, they somehow breached our most secure communications. They knew details of the operation that were known only to a handful of our highest officers." Emperor Dai waved dismissively. "A lucky intelligence coup, nothing more. Prepare the bioweapon for deployment against Earth itself. We will crush this irritant once and for all." Back on Earth, President Yoon met with the Combined Defense Council immediately after his broadcast. "They won't comply," said Admiral Han. "Their culture cannot accept defeat, especially from what they consider an inferior species." "I know," Yum replied. "I didn't expect them to." The warning was a formality, one last chance for peace before what comes next. General Lee looked up from her tactical display. "Operation Prometheus is ready, sir. All units are in position." Yum nodded. "Begin the countdown. When the 48 hours expire, we show the Empire exactly what happens when humanity is pushed too far." Across the solar system, hidden human fleets began final preparations. Weapons of unimaginable power, technologies the Empire didn't know existed, were brought online. Strike teams that had infiltrated Imperial worlds years ago received their activation codes. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had judged humanity by its apparent technological level rather than understanding a fundamental truth. Throughout their violent history, humans had become masters at hiding their true capabilities until the moment they chose to strike. And now, the full force of humanity's wrath was about to be unleashed. Admiral Kang stood on the bridge of the Earth flagship Retribution, leading a fleet of 200 vessels toward the Imperial core. The massive ship hummed with power as they approached the final jump point. Kang wore a simple black uniform with only small silver stars on the collar marking his rank. His weathered face showed no emotion, but his eyes burned with purpose. 48 hours have passed," he said quietly. No response from the Emperor. The bridge crew worked silently at their stations. Each person knew what was about to happen. Each understood the weight of what they were about to unleash. Commander June approached, her steps precise on the polished floor. "All ships report dimensional drives charge," she reported. "Strike teams on all 57 target worlds confirm ready status." Kang nodded once. He looked at the large display showing their fleet. 200 ships of various sizes, each powered by technology humanity had kept hidden for decades. The ships looked unlike anything the Empire had ever seen, with smooth hulls that seemed to bend light around them. "The Empire made 3 mistakes," Kang said, his voice carrying across the silent bridge. "They attacked us when we offered peace. They used bioweapons on civilians. And worst of all, they assumed we showed them everything we could do." He paused. "It's time they learned the truth." He turned to June. "Execute Operation Prometheus." June pressed her palm against a glowing panel. "Operation Prometheus executing now." Across the bridge, Lieutenant Sun activated the fleet-wide communication. "All ships, initiate dimensional jump on my mark. 3, 2, 1. Mark." Space tore open around the human fleet. But these weren't normal jumps into hyperspace. The dimensional drives created controlled tiers in the fabric of reality itself, connecting points in space that should be impossibly far apart. In an instant, the human fleet vanished from the edge of Imperial space. Across the Empire, on 57 carefully selected worlds, space ripped open in perfect synchronization. Human warships emerged simultaneously from artificial wormholes directly above the planets. The precisely coordinated attack had been planned for years, targeting the Empire's most important military, industrial, and political centers. On the Imperial agricultural world Harvest Prime, Governor Pack was enjoying his breakfast when the sky darkened. Looking up, he saw 5 human vessels hovering above the capital city. Before he could reach for his communication device, blue beams lanced downward, somehow penetrating the planetary shields that had protected the world for centuries. On the mining world, Drelax IV, General Moon was inspecting the latest shipment of rare minerals when alarms blared. The planet's defensive fleet scrambled to respond, but their weapons passed harmlessly through the human ships as if they were ghosts. The human vessels fired gravity lances that didn't damage the Imperial ships. Instead, they increased gravitational forces 1,000-fold inside the vessels, crushing crew and systems alike. On the manufacturing hub of Forge, workers looked up from assembly lines to see human ships materializing inside the massive factory domes, somehow bypassing all exterior defenses. Rather than opening fire, The human soldiers deployed strange devices that shut down every piece of machinery, leaving the Empire's largest weapons factory completely inoperable. The pattern repeated across the Empire. The human attacks were surgical and devastating, yet strangely contained. They targeted military installations, government centers, and infrastructure. But civilian populations were largely avoided. It wasn't random destruction. It was carefully calibrated dismantling of the Empire's ability to make war. Admiral Kang's flagship emerged above Imperius Prime, the throne world of the Empire. 7 other human ships appeared alongside it, taking position above the gleaming Imperial Palace that sprawled across an entire continent. "Planetary shields have been neutralized," reported Commander June. "Our phase shift technology is working perfectly. Their weapons cannot lock onto our ships." Kang nodded. "Open a channel to the palace. Visual and audio." On Dez's throne world, panic spread through the ornate halls of the Imperial Palace. Ministers and military officers rushed about in confusion as communication systems overloaded with desperate messages from across the Empire. Emperor Day sat rigid on his throne, watching in disbelief as the palace screen showed footage of burning imperial cities and fleeing refugees. The reports came in faster than his advisors could process them. Harvest Prime has fallen. Drylax's defense fleet destroyed. Forge factories neutralized. Imperial Academy on Mentor is burning. The shipyards at Constructus are completely destroyed. How is this possible? The Emperor whispered, his voice barely audible even in the hushed throne room. They're just one world. His chief advisor's face was ashen. "Majesty, we're receiving a direct transmission from a human vessel above the palace." Before the Emperor could respond, the massive screen at the front of the throne room activated. Admiral Kang's face appeared, calm and resolved. "Emperor Dai," Kang said without preamble. "As you can see, your empire is now at our mercy." Day rose from his throne, rage replacing his shock. "This is impossible. You cannot have this technology. You're a primitive, isolated world." "That was your first mistake," Kang replied. "Intelligence reports indicate you've been studying us for centuries while remaining hidden. We could have destroyed you long ago." Day's eyes widened at hearing his own intelligence chief's words repeated back to him. "Humanity discovered your empire 237 years ago," Kang continued. "We found one of your scout ships that crashed on our moon. From it, we learned about the galaxy and your empire's habit of conquering primitive worlds." Screens around the throne room showed more human ships appearing above other imperial worlds. Palace ministers whispered in horror as they recognized key military bases, shield generators, and command centers being systematically destroyed. "Instead of announcing ourselves," Kang said, "we watched. We learned. We prepared. We developed technologies specifically designed to counter your strengths. While you conquered the galaxy through brute force, we perfected stealth, dimensional physics, and gravity manipulation." Minister Jun stepped forward, finding his voice. "But why reveal yourselves now? You could have remained hidden." "We wished to be left alone," Kang answered simply. "When you discovered Earth, we hoped peaceful coexistence was possible. Your emperor chose differently." Emperor Dai sank slowly back onto his throne as the full reality of the situation became clear. His invincible empire, ruler of 10,000 worlds for 10 millennia, had been utterly outmaneuvered by a species they had dismissed as primitive. "What are your terms?" he asked, his voice hollow. "The same as before," Kang replied. "Recognition of human sovereignty, non-interference in our affairs. And now we add reparations for New Terra and the surrender of all those responsible for the Bioevan attack." Dad's fists clenched on the armrests of his throne. "And if I refuse?" Kang's expression didn't change. "Look at your screens, Emperor. 57 of your worlds are already under our control. We've disabled your military capacity but spared your civilians. That restraint can end at any moment." As if to emphasize the point, a human gravity lance fired from the Retribution, striking an uninhabited moon visible from the palace windows. The entire moon shattered into fragments before the Emperor's eyes. "Your worlds will burn," Kang said quietly, "just as we promised." The Imperial Palace shook as Earth ships appeared in the skies above. The massive structures of gold and crystal that had stood for 5,000 years trembled as human vessels hovered directly overhead, their gravity fields causing subtle distortions in the air. Inside the Grand Throne Room, Emperor Day sat surrounded by his remaining advisors. Most of the Imperial High Command had already been captured or killed during Operation Prometheus. The Emperor's ornate armor, normally gleaming with pride, now seemed to weigh heavily on his shoulders. "They're landing," Minister Jun reported, his voice hollow. "A diplomatic vessel has touched down in the central courtyard." Emperor Day nodded slowly. "So this is how 10,000 years of imperial rule ends." The massive doors to the throne room slid open. General Min of Earth's diplomatic corps stepped onto imperial soil, flanked by soldiers in advanced combat suits. Min was a short woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much war. She wore a simple blue uniform with minimal decoration, the opposite of the elaborate imperial style. The human soldiers carried no visible weapons, yet their combat suits hummed with hidden power. The Imperial Guards, still standing at their posts more from habit than hope, looked primitive by comparison. Emperor Day rose from his throne. With deliberate movements, he removed his crown, a twisted mass of rare metals embedded with gems from 100 conquered worlds. He placed it on the small table beside his throne. Then, to the shock of everyone present, he knelt. "You could have annihilated us all," he said quietly. Min nodded. "Yes," she replied. "But unlike you, we understand the value of restraint. Genocide is not our way, despite your attempts to practice it on us." She approached until she stood directly before the kneeling emperor. "The terms remain as Admiral Kang presented them. Your empire as you knew it is over. A new galactic government will form. Earth will help guide this transition." "And what of me?" Day asked. "You will stand trial for war crimes, particularly for the attack on New Terra," Min said. "But you will receive something you never offered your enemies, a fair hearing." Minister Jun stepped forward. "General Min, what happens to the Imperial worlds now? Will they become human colonies?"